Hey guys, Tarke here, and I want to talk you through my 319 League Start, which is going to be a Lightning Trap Saboteur. A little bit of housekeeping while I run a map just to show off the build. Yeah, my aura's all active. So I had plans on playing some pretty out there builds, but the sad reality is of the first week of the league, I only have 2 days to play. I'm literally in hospital pretty much every other day of the entire league. And then the one day that I have to play uninterrupted, I got a notification that my ISP is going to be doing maintenance in the area. So to make the most of my very limited league start, I've decided to play a build that I'm very confident on. That being said, there's actually been quite a substantial series of changes to this build, which makes me quite excited to see how it feels in comparison. Now, people who followed my adventures through 319 will be saying, but Tarke, you had Omni for this build. How are you going to replicate that in a SSF environment? Because of a series of balance changes that GGG made this patch, to the passive skill tree, removing certain masteries, changes to certain crafts like the Gravicious craft, so on and so forth, I've made some pretty heavy changes to my skill links, my skill tree, and everything such like that, to the end extent that this is going to perform like quite a different build. So actually just throwing my things. And then we just kind of stand there and dip, 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 dip. But yeah, this was a build that I thoroughly enjoyed. I did all the base content in the game. I did everything but Ubers. I have got some videos on my channel of my first attempt of Uber Cirrus. And this was a character that I basically played for the first 10 or so days of the league in SSF. And also keep in mind going forward as I get into path building stuff. Everything I do from the point of view of what I find fun as a SSF softcore player. So if you are someone who plays in Trade League, if you are someone who plays hardcore SSF, then obviously you need to take what I'm showing you and warp it to suit your tastes. This is just what I'm going to do. I'm not saying it's the best thing out there before anyone gets anything twisted. And if you follow along with this and you think a little bit for yourself, I am confident that you can do all the content in the game. However, this isn't going to be a situation where you load up my POB, purchase everything on PoE Trade, and you suddenly have triple cost jewels, forbidden flesh, melding, blah, 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 blah. Not like that at all. In fact, this is a very, very minimal, 2-stat item level path of building, which is why I'm so excited for this build, because even with such a minimal POB, I've actually gotten really respectable damage, which is very close to the damage you saw in that video just then, and actually surpasses that damage when you use a tornado focus helmet, which I didn't actually use on this character. So let's get into what's different. The main difference is with the changes to Reservation on the tree, and the nerf to Defiance banner, and the nerf of the Gravicious 10% of life to ES craft. I ended up making the decision to drop Determination entirely, running Grace, Skitterbot's Wrath, and feel like, whoa, Tarke, how are you going to survive any physical damage? I then stack a bunch of physical taken as elemental damage. Even in a day 2, day 3 environment, with no fancy gear whatsoever, with one Essence craft and the new Gravicious craft, you have 33% of physical taken as elemental. You can get an additional 20% quite easily through an influenced helmet with then Eldritch influence or going for redeem influences. There are temple mods, there's warband mods, so on and so forth, and you've got stuff like Taste of Hate. There are a few different items you can go for that you can stack up to get to a very comfortable 50% of fizz taken as early damage. You then have other options later down the line, such as Timeless Jewels, so on and so forth. But let's just briefly go through the gear so you get an idea of the kind of gear that I'm talking about. We'll then talk through the skills, we'll then talk through the passive skill tree. So my goal with everything was to make a set of gear that I could get in about 2-3 days of play. So this is a very basic item. You just get a Essence of Woe, slam it onto a Platinum Crest, and you keep throwing Essence of Woes until you get possible lightning spell gems or a maximum added lightning or added cold to spells, and then you just craft on critical strike chance. Obviously, you'd want everything stacked on there. You're going to want the spell damage, the +1, the crit multi, the flat damage, but that isn't a realistic item to have at the very start of an SSF league. Likewise with the shield, I want to go super realistic, so this is just a 1 damage mod, +1 lightning skill gems. You could get increased spell damage, increased lightning damage, crit chance, but again, keeping everything super minimal for realistic values. The helmet has nothing on it at all. You're basically just going to be looking for a helmet with a good enough life roll, some helpful stats, be it like attributes you need, or resistances. I will need some flat strength somewhere in this build. And then I craft trigger socketed spells when you focus. Our socketed spells I will get to later for the focus shenanigans. Again, I've already showed off the chest we're going for, just a very basic early on bunch of fizz taken as elemental. Just one item with spell suppression on it is enough with 0 step to cap us out very comfortably. If we got spell suppression on more pieces of gear, then we can save a bunch of skill points on the skill tree. But early on, I just want to hit 100% as easily as possible, so we just need one piece of gear outside of an 0 step. Its 0 step is going to be a very powerful item in the next league for numerous reasons. One, they've nerfed the availability of spell suppression on gear. A maximum roll at 0 step is 26. I've gone for a mid-roll one. You can very easily get a max roll one even in SSF. Because of the vendor recipe. If you vendor 3 of the same unique, you get a fresh unique back with randomized rolls. So basically you're divining that way. With the changes to divines being the new exalts, they'll be very hard to come by in SSF and very expensive in a trade league. So having stuff like this is a very nice way to get a good solid pair of boots. Once you have a pair of 0 step that you're happy with, you then run your Uber Lab, and you run a couple more Uber Labs until you hit either flat lightning damage if you haven't killed recently, or elemental penetration if you haven't killed recently. Those are one of the 2 you're going for. We don't want the crit chance enchant that I often recommend for trap builds because we're using Tornado, which will turn that enchant off. For the amulet, just +1 lightning skill gems. If it has some other stats on it, great. With Lake of Kalandra, it's actually going to be possible to double our modifiers, so we could get like a +2, like 50 multi Ami. But again, don't want to go crazy with it, so it's going for a minimal +1, very solid. I like to run amethyst rings for the chaos res. One thing which is worth noting, you need some flat fire damage to spells somewhere on your gear. You can either get it on your abyss jewel, you can get it on your weapon, or you can get it on your jewelry. The jewelry is the easiest way of getting it because there is a craft which gives flat global fire, flat global lightning. Craft that onto one of your pieces of jewelry and you're good to go. Stygian Vise, with Essence of Zeals, you get the Trapper Mine throwing speed. Keep throwing Essence of Zeals in until you get like a good life roll, something else helpful, either that resists, flat strength as already mentioned, or like increased flask charges gain, flask charges duration, something to do with flasks. I like to get an open prefix when I can to put the flat evasion, flat ES craft on there. Very, very strong. For the Hypnotic Jewel, obviously life and as much damage as possible. For this, I went for a very realistic one. These aren't the best damage mods you can get. In fact, the best would be life and then a bunch of really stacked flat damage rolls to spells, but then maybe like a max roll multi. But I just went for something which was quite easy and obtainable to get. Likewise for the Cobalt Jewel, ideally you'd be looking at a life triple damage jewel. So like life and then crit multi for spells, crit multi for lightning, global crit multi, or spell damage, increased damage, trap throwing speed, projectile damage. You have a lot of ways of scaling lightning trap, but just any life damage, that'll do for now. Now, obviously, because it's SSF, I'm not planning on having a million very strong jewels right off the bat. As I get access to more jewels, I then take 2-point jewels on the tree. The main goal with this is to have something that I know with confidence that will take me through my entire Atlas process, through the entire end game, and also has potential for quite a few interesting new unique items that exist now. So if I did, for example, get my hands on, say, a Sunblast belt, Lightning Trap, in my opinion, is the best trap for Sunblast because it's insane coverage. If, for example, I got my hands on something like a Thunder Fist, I could then do some quite interesting setups using like a Thunder Fist and then maybe a Lightning Spire trap. There are a few quite cool options now with the whole Fizz taken as elemental thing. If I got access to an early Cloak of Fame, or a lightning coil, those would be very strong options, and basically just stacking as much indirect mitigation. Unfortunately, with the Gravicious craft chest, the days of just taking Ghost Dance and having one craft chest which gives you 10% of your life is over. If you want to make use of Ghost Dance now, you want to actually be wearing some ES gear. Again, to keep everything minimal, I purposely didn't roll good evasion ES rolls on any of my items. Ideally, you would be getting good evasion ES gear, but at base minimum, I will have about 500, close to 600 energy shield, and let's say about 4.5k life, which is, for me, plenty on a trapper with the amount of damage and clear that I'll have. What you saw in that demonstration, this is basically those numbers. Also worth noting with the configs, I'm not cheesing anything. I will actually quite realistically hit 65% shocks. On the character you just saw, I would reliably 50% shock, even stuff like Cirrus. But again, just to be minimal, we've not done full shock effect. This is just enabling the guaranteed shock we get from skitterbots. We always chill because skitterbots chill. As long as we crit, we will always apply a burn because we have some flat fire damage. We need that to enable this node, which gives us a bunch of multi, crit chance, and Ellie pen. It is worth noting that thanks to this lovely new node up here, we also get a very easy 100% crit chance using the critical strike chance gem. If you started getting really good, like crit chance on your shield and a bunch of other slots, you would then drop out this gem for a higher DPS gem. To go through the links briefly: Lightning Trap, Swift Assembly, Life Tap, Lightning Pen, Charge Traps, Crit Strikes. These are the links I was using in the demonstration I showed you earlier. Yes, you could, for example, use Trap and Mine damage, which would be more damage, but it lowers your trap throwing speed, which I'm not a fan of, and I like this setup, and I find it very comfortable. As previously mentioned, Grace Skitterbot's Wrath. Steel Skin is our only skill not linked to Life Tap, which is how we're proccing our Arcane Surge. Tornado, Hydrosphere, Conductivity, Life Tap. We've got Jewel Curse on the tree. By taking Whispers of Doom, we run Conductivity and Sniper's Mark. We have Sniper's Mark, Flame Dash, Faster Casting, Life Tap. You only ever cast this on exceptionally tanky rares and bosses. You'd normally just press your one focus button that drops all your main damage. If you then need it, you can cast that on top. Bear Trap, you only again use in the most rare of circumstances. You'll see that I only ever used it once on the boss. I don't use it once at all during the map itself. Siphoning Trap, you can drop. I do like having access to one button, which gives me emergency healing, either a Siphoning Trap or a Enduring Cry. Enduring Cry linked to Urgent Orders would be a very solid option. They've actually buffed that. It's got increased cry speed now, and could be another solid option of physical mitigation, so that might be something that I do actually end up running over Siphoning Trap. But Siphoning Trap does give a lot of regen, especially if you throw it down like the middle of a breach or an expedition. It makes you nigh immortal outside of, obviously, one-shots. Very straightforward tree, very self-explanatory tree. You actually pretty much level it in this order. If you say, Tarke, a level 96 character is too high for me, what points would I cut? You would cut off these 5 points here, these 2 points here, and you cut off these 4 points here. That then takes you down to level 85 tree, which anyone can reach level 85. Very realistic. I would fill in those points pretty much in order. As soon as I got myself a really nice jewel, I'd then want to go for the 2 point and go for these. I would want to get this chaos stuff kind of early for the corrupting blood. This is basically something I would want once I start mapping. And then get the frenzies towards the end. Can also cut off some life evasion nodes. I quite like both of these nodes here. I like to get my evasion as high as possible. The more evasion I have, the more value I get out of Ghost Dance. And again, you want high avoidance, and again, ideally you'll be getting some items with some nice evasion ES rolls on there, but I want to do everything as minimal as possible in a league start scenario. There are a few choice masteries that are worth shouting out to make the leveling process smoother for you. Recover 30 life when your trap is triggered by an enemy. Very strong in the early game. Is actually something you can run in the end game if you want. I have got an open trap mastery here, so you could keep it if you'd like. But yeah, very, very strong. It makes you very tanky for the first 8 or so acts, at which point it starts to fall off. And up here, until you've got yourself a very nice crit value, lightning damage with non-critical strikes as lucky is very strong. So when you're first starting out, you've even got like 20-30% crit. You slap this on and you'll notice a very sizable buff to your damage. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Very, very self-explanatory. As you get more spell suppression on your gear, you can cut off these points. You have quite a few different options in terms of spell suppression based on the amount that you have in your gear. So here we're getting a whole bunch, I believe 39% for 5 points. But let's say you get 2 really good rolls on gear. You can take these, and for 1 less point, you're still getting a grand total of 22 spell suppression. Very, very strong. If you need just a tiny bit more, you could take resourcefulness here, which gives you 8% spell suppress and life and energy shield. So for example, let's say I was just shy, you trim off like 1 node here, and you take 2 nodes there. Very much a case of you just feel it out based on what you need at the time. But this is something that I'm very confident in, it's something that I'm very much looking forward to playing, and it's nice to know that I've got a build that I know with a 100% certainty will get me through the entire endgame process very comfortably while I'm so wrapped up going into Hostile every other day. Very curious to see how this build feels with maybe some of the interesting new items if I do get my hands on them. Very curious to see what sort of crazy stuff we could craft with Lake of Kalandra. And again, final statement. If you are a super experienced Trade League player, I'd recommend using this as a foundational base and then adapting it from there based on your needs. And if you're someone who likes to play super min-max builds, but you don't like doing that yourself, I would recommend looking out for other guides. There are other people who've done super min-max Trade League trappers, but not any lightning trappers that I've seen. Anyway, I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.